Hi, my name's Emma, and I'm a huge book nerd.
You're my library, always open for business, but you never show it. You're just sitting with it, but I know the score, and you're killing it.
January has come to an end, and we are into February, so it is time to do a January wrap-up video, and let me tell you, January has been an amazing reading month. This New Year's resolution of reading books that I want to read is just the best thing ever. It's led me to a lot of really great stuff. The first book that I read in January is actually a play, and that's Dog Underdog by Suzanne Laurie Parks. I loved this play. It is about two brothers. They're both black men. One of them has a job as a Lincoln impersonator in like this really weird like arcade thing. And his name in real life is Lincoln as well. And then his brother's name is Booth. And Booth wants to become a 3-card Monte player. And his brother Lincoln used to be really good at it. So he's kind of trying to get his brother to teach him. I don't know what else to tell you about it. It's just brilliantly written, and I want to see it so bad because there's so many like visual things that I'm really curious about. I ended up giving it 5 stars. The next book that I read in January was The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. So this book is about a girl going into high school who, at the very beginning of the book, she gets raped by her brother's best friend, and she's too afraid to tell anyone because it's her brother's best friend, and like he's very close to their family and everything. So she goes through high school bearing that burden. The structure is one of the genius things about it, in my opinion, because it's like freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year, and you see how she like changes. And this book was just like, the pacing was right on. The characters were amazing, the plot was so good, the structure was great. Like, I loved it. It was so engaging, and like, this is one of those books that I could not put down. I read the last like 200 pages of it in one sitting, and I think the story is also really important because there are so many girls in high school who have had something, sexual assault of some sort, happen to them, and they don't know how to speak out about it. So, I don't know, I just think this is so important, and I think it was very well done. Definitely trigger warning for sexual assault and rape, but a very important book. Then the next book that I read in January was my favorite of the month, and it is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I have been dying to read this since it like blew up on Instagram. I found a book of the month copy at a thrift store, and I picked it up, and I was immediately sucked in when I started reading it. I mean, the hook of this story is just so great. It starts off with this family's house burning down, and the family keeps saying like, oh, Lizzie did it, like, but Lizzie's gone, they don't know where Lizzie is. And then it like jumps back in time, and the rest of the book is the story to how we got to this point where the house burns down. And it is just amazing. Like, the character development is so good. The intricacies of the story and like how things come back up. There are just so many little details that are so good, and I'm a sucker for a character-driven story, and I just loved this. I loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars. I mean, it was my favorite book of this month. I'm sure it's going to be a contender for best book of 2019 for me, but yeah, we're not there yet. So next, I read The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. So this was really a month for me of like reading the popular books, and I did really, really like this. There was something about it that I was a little let down by, I think because I had also just read Little Fires Everywhere. So coming off of that and reading this, I think if I had read this after reading like a less impressive book, I might have been like more impressed by this. I really like the story. It's basically about a girl who moves to the wilderness of Alaska with her dad and her mom. And her dad is a Vietnam vet. He's got some post-traumatic stress disorder issues, but it's the 70s, so that goes undiagnosed. And basically it goes through like years of her life as they're in Alaska and like what happens and everything. My only complaint was with this book was that everything felt like it happened too quickly. Like, we spent a lot of time in like the less exciting events, and then the really intense dramatic events happened just very fast, like in a matter of pages. And I was like, I wanted more dive into like what's going on in her head when these really tragic things are happening. And like, I don't know, it just felt like it jumped too quickly to these bigger plot points, and I'm not sure, I can't put my finger on exactly what bothered me about that, but I would give this a 4.75 stars, to be like that precise, because it was really good, but there was just something that I felt was missing. Next, I read Macbeth by William Shakespeare for my Shakespeare class, and I really, really enjoyed it. I did a combination of, I listened to the audiobook version while following along with the text, because I find it hard to just read Shakespeare in my head. Like, if I'm gonna read it, I have to read it out loud. But an audiobook with it is like even better, especially because they're like actors playing the different characters. It's not just one person. I really like Macbeth. It's not my favorite Shakespeare. Hamlet's my favorite Shakespeare, which we're reading this week actually, so I'm really excited about that. But Macbeth is really good, and there are some lines in it that I just like Lady Macbeth's out damn spot monologue, amazing. Macduff when he says I shall contest it like a man, but I shall also feel it like a man, and I'm like, oh, the best line in the whole show. Anyways, I love it, gave it 5 stars. Then I reread Sweat by Lynn Nottage for my playwriting class. I had already read this once, but reading it again, I appreciate it more. I cried, which is saying something because I don't cry often like reading plays. I'll cry when I see plays all the time, but like reading plays, I don't usually cry because they're not as like, it's like a blueprint of the actual, what it's supposed to be, you know, it's not as complete as like a novel or like seeing the play, but I cried. I think it's beautiful. So the story is about this group of like blue-collar workers in Reading, Pennsylvania, and they work at this factory, and the factory starts to lay people off. It delves into racism in like the blue-collar worker community, and like how race affects their friendships as something, when something difficult happens, like people getting laid off, how then this underlying racism kind of rises to the top, and like, it's so cool. I highly recommend, if you ever get the chance to read this or see it, do it. Then I read The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker. This is yet another very popular book that was going around Instagram, and I was like, you know what? I really want to read that. So I pre-ordered it because it's cheaper to pre-order than to buy it after it comes out. So I pre-ordered it, and I got it, and I read it, and I liked it quite a lot, actually. I think the story is really like whimsical, and it's interesting because I can't think of many like whimsical, like apocalyptic contagion stories, but this was that. A lot of people are saying the writing style is like dreamy and like meandering, but like I feel like that fits the story, so that didn't bother me at all. I actually liked the writing style. The interesting thing about it was it kind of made me want to go to sleep in like a relaxing way, but it was about like an illness in which you fall asleep. So like, I don't know, that was a little strange. I think my biggest complaint about this is the dreams that these people have when they go into these sleep coma things. Were never fully explored. It was like the book was amazing until the end when we didn't get this explanation. The other thing is the characters, again, I think this is because I read Little Fires Everywhere, the characters weren't as meaty and well-rounded and awesome as I wanted them to be, and I think if the characters had been more engaging, then I would have been more into this. I gave it 4 stars in the end. I do think it's a good book, and I definitely think it's worth the read, and I love this cover. 4-star book. Then I read another play. I did so good this month reading plays. I read Replay by Nicola Wren, and this is a one-woman show about a police officer who is kind of sucked back into dealing with the death of her brother. And I bought this because I'm working on a one-person show for class right now that is going to dive into me losing my brother. So I was like, I need some inspiration. I want to figure out, because I haven't seen many one-person shows. I don't know a lot about how they work. So I was like, I just happened to stumble across this and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to read it. And I didn't get that much from it. It's nothing like what I want to do with my one-person show, and I didn't think that it was necessarily remarkable. I'd be really curious to see it, because sometimes with these plays that I read and I'm not impressed, they're so much better performed. So I don't know. I ended up giving it 3 stars though. And then I have a feeling some of you will be excited about this one. I finally read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and I have complicated feelings about this. For anyone who doesn't know, this book is about a young shepherd boy who lives in Spain. He basically gets sent on this journey to pursue his personal legend, which apparently is located at the pyramids. So he has to get there, and it's his like journey. And I loved the spiritual journey of this book, and like the idea that we all have something we're called to, and like something that is like our dream basically. And there are all these people who give up on their dream because they're like, oh, I'm happy with what I have now. But then they always have this longing of like, what if I had pursued this? So that was interesting. I really liked that. The thing that I could not get past, there are no females with agency in this entire book. And there is opportunity for females with agency. They just don't exist here. The only women is a gypsy who's untrustworthy in the beginning. She's the only one who actually talks, just pretty much, by the way. And then there's the first girl that our main character falls in love with, and she never speaks. We never actually meet her. He just talks about her. And then the third character we meet is his true love, apparently. But they fall in love, and she seems to be kind of like, it's a little creepy that you suddenly love me so much. And he keeps pursuing her, and eventually she falls in love with him. And there's this one point where the alchemist speaks on her behalf and is like, oh, don't worry, she loves you, she's gonna wait for you. And I'm like, okay, at least let her say that herself, maybe? I don't know, maybe we don't need a man to say that for her. And also the whole, like, her whole, like, journey is that she's like, oh yeah, I'll wait here forever, just dreaming of you to come back across the desert and be with me. And I'm like, you have a personal legend too, go follow it, like, excuse me. Anyways, that drove me absolutely nuts, and I could not get past it. I was like, I have no problem with there being a male main character, being a male storyline. That's fine. I love male protagonists. I don't know why, but I really, really like reading male protagonists. The problem is, all of the parts that should have, he didn't learn anything from women, first of all. Everything he learned was from men. Women in this story, there are opportunities for them to have agency, and it just wasn't there. So that's the thing that bothers me. That's like, you can tell a story about a man, that's fine. I have no problem with men in general, but you cannot strip women from a story completely, because like, the world is not made completely of men, and women are not just romantic objects. So like, I couldn't get past it. Because of that, I gave the book 3 stars. If it had had women with agency, I probably would have given it 5 stars, because it's a good book, but why, sir? And it's not even that old. Like, there's no excuse. It's not like from the 50s or earlier than that. It's from like the 80s, so yes. Moving on, next I read another play for fun. It is Skin a Cat by Isley Lynn, and it's about a woman who has vaginismus, and that's like where you get extreme pain in your vagina, but it's like psychological, it's not physical. It's usually a lot of like rape victims suffer from it because it's memory of pain, so it comes back every time you try to have sex. But this person has just always had it. She never had anything traumatic happen to her, she just always had it. And so it's basically about her always thinking that sex was supposed to be like this magical thing, and then finding it terrifying, and like nobody talks about that, and like it happens to a lot of people, and no one talks about that like sex is not always a magical, beautiful thing for everyone. Like sometimes there are obstacles you have to overcome and it's like difficult. The play is basically about her like figuring out her sex life, which is very interesting, and I really loved this play. I thought it was beautifully honest, and it did a really, really good job of direct address to the audience turning into a scene, going back to direct address to the audience in a really seamless way. It was very cool. From a playwriting perspective, I was like, I'm stealing this and this and this. And then like from a story perspective, I was like, this is just really, really great. I ended up giving this 4 stars. The next book that I read in January was another play, and it's The Flick by Annie Baker. We had to read this for our Theater of the 21st Century class, and I really liked this, actually. I don't know if I would like it staged, because it is very like meandering, but I thought that the way she revealed things, the way she revealed information to the audience was done in such a slow, deliberate manner that like as I learned things, I was like, oh, like this is so cool, and then like things come back that were mentioned earlier, and like I don't know how to explain it, but I really liked it. So The Flick is about a young man who gets a job at a movie theater that still uses film. There's these 2 people he works with, and it's basically all about like their relationship and like how he gets on with this job, and like I don't know if I want to explain any more, but it's really good. It's really like slice of life-ish. I really enjoyed it personally, and now I kind of want to see it, so I ended up giving it 4 stars. The last book that I read in January was In the Woods by Tanya French. So a long time ago in Dublin, there was a little boy and his 2 friends who disappeared in the woods, and they were missing, and no one knew where they were. And then the search party went out searching for them, and they found the little boy clinging to a tree. His shoes were filled with blood, and his friends were nowhere to be found, and he didn't remember anything, and his friends were never found. And then flash forward, we're following that boy who is now a detective who is investigating another child murder in the same location that his friends went missing years previously. I found this synopsis misleading because I thought that it was going to be about figuring out what happened to these 2 kids that went missing, because that's the fascinating part of the story, is the 2 kids that went missing and the boy who was left with blood on the inside, like poured into his shoes and put back on his feet. Like that is fascinating. And then the other story is just more, I mean, still horrible, but like more run-of-the-mill, like less mysterious. And so I thought that the book was going to be about finding his friends or him remembering what happened, and it's not about that at all. And I found that really disappointing. I liked the writing. I thought it was a little bit too long. Like there were parts where I was like, all right, cut to the chase. They do a lot of really interesting investigating, and like it's good, it is good. I just was really disappointed because I thought I was gonna get the boy with the blood in his shoes story, and I didn't get that. So just so you know, you're not gonna get that if you read this. So I ended up giving it 3 stars. And those were all of the books that I read in January. It was a wonderful reading month for me. I'm so pleased. If I count The Great alone, I read 5 5-star books, which is insane. And I read 4 4-star books, and I read 3 3-star books. So once again, just a really good month. Nothing below 3 stars, and so many 5 stars, and I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased. It was so great. I'm gonna keep doing the read what I feel like reading, so there will be no February TBR, because I mean, this is just working so well for me. But I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've read any of the books that I read and you want to talk about them, please leave comments down below. I would love to chat. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, leave those comments down below, and have a wonderful February, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! Mwah.
Now I was headed to the bus